Good morning, everybody. It's just past 10 o'clock on Friday, the 16th of October. Welcome to all members and observers to the Education, Libraries and Localism panel. Before we start, I need to read the following announcement regarding COVID-19 and attendance at this meeting. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Council will be holding this meeting electronically in accordance with the relevant regulations. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in an electronic capacity, and there is a link on the Council's website for them to do so. Members of this meeting are asked to keep their microphones and cameras switched off until called to speak, and to switch their microphone and cameras off once they have finished speaking. To indicate a wish to speak, members should request to do so using the chat function, the meeting chat function, by saying speak, and I will pick that up. At the end of the debate on each item of business, there will be a vote. Members should vote using the meeting chat function by indicating for, against, or abstain, and I will declare the result after each vote. Officers are in attendance, and for which we thank them for their support and help, but we will keep their cameras and microphones switched off unless they are called to speak. If we need to, we will have a break at a convenient point along the way as we go through the meeting. So having said that, we have a couple of membership changes. Nigel Quinton, good morning, is substituting for Anthony Rowlands for this meeting only, and John Graham, also good morning, John, substituting for Caroline Clapper for this meeting only. I'm going to go around now and ask each of you to introduce yourself and let people know which division you represent. So starting, and I'm going to do it in alphabetical order, I hope, pretty much, with Judy Billing.
Thank you, Terry. My name's Judy Billing, and I'm the County Councillor for Hitchin North and leader of the Labour Group and spokesperson on education, localism and libraries.
Annie, thank you. Annie Brewster.
Yes, I'm Annie Brewster, Conservative Member for Harpenden Rural and Deputy Executive for Public Health and Prevention.
And I should say that I'm Terry Duris. I'm the Cabinet Member for Education, Libraries and Localism, and I represent the Bridgewater Division, which is to the north of Hemel Hempstead in Dacorum. Michael Hearn, I don't believe is with us, is he, Stephanie?
No, not yet.
No. Nick Hollinghurst.
Gee.
Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nick Hollinghurst. I'm the County Councillor for Tring.
Thank you. Jeff Jones. You're still muted, Jeff. We'll come back to Jeff in a moment. Asif Khan.
Asif Khan from North Watford.
Thank you. Good morning, Asif. Mark Mills Bishop.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Mark Mills Bishop, County Councillor for Framstead End and Chelmsford, also Deputy Chairman of this panel. Thank you, Chairman.
Alan Plancy.
Not with us yet, Chairman.
Oh, right, okay. Nigel Quinton.
Good morning. I'm the Lib Dem member for Hansard and Pear Tree, which is the middle of Welwyn Garden City, and our spokesperson on public health and prevention and Vice Chair of Scrutiny.
Thank you, Nigel, and good morning. Richard Thake.
Richard Thake is just trying to log in, Chairman. He'll be with us shortly.
Okay. Mark Watkin.
Good morning, Chairman. I'm Mark Watkin. I'm the Lib Dem spokesperson for Education, Localism, Libraries and Children's Services. My division is Nascot Park in Watford. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back to Jeff Jones if Jeff has re-emerged. Jeff?
He's not rejoined yet, Terry.
Okay. All right. So I'm sure that Alan Clancy and Richard Thake will join us as soon as they possibly can. We have no apologies. With regard to member interests, can I just remind you, please, to declare any interests at the beginning of each relevant item as they come along on the agenda. So if we can now go to the minutes of the previous meeting, and what I would ask colleagues to do, if you are in agreement, is to, and in fact, I've just got to turn on my, bear with me, my meeting chat bar. If you're in agreement, can we agree the minutes of the meeting, both part 1 and part 2, at this point in time? Because otherwise we will have to leave the meeting later on, go into part 2 and then come back again. So can we agree the minutes, please? And the minutes have now been agreed. Thank you very much indeed. So item 2, public petitions, there are none. Item 3, the Hertfordshire County Council's mission arrangements for 2022-23. Does anybody have any declarations of interest that they want to make at this point in time relating to this item? Mark Mills Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just make a declaration, which I usually do, in that my wife is a teacher at a primary school in Broxbourne, and my son is a head teacher of a primary school in Welling Hatfield, and I'm a director of Dame Alice Owen School in Potters Bar. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. And if you'll forgive me, colleagues, just to note the sad and untimely passing of Alan Davidson, who was the former head teacher of Dame Alice Owen, and somebody who should be credited with the fantastic work that school does, who died very recently, and our respects are passed to him and his family. So Alan Plancy, you have now joined the meeting. Can you just introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm in.
Yeah, who are you?
Oh, sorry.
Just tell us what. Just tell us what
Councillor
division
for
you represent.
Bournemouth South.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Right, Mark Watkin.
Sorry, just to point out, Chairman, but you haven't done the matters arising from the minutes. You seem to have moved on. I don't know whether you're intending to go back to matters arising.
I had not. It's technically, of course, they're not actually on the. They're not actually on the agenda, which is what I was going from, because it's just the items. But we can let's just. Was there something you wanted to pick up?
I've joined the meeting now. Richard Thake.
Thank you, Richard Thake. And you represent which division?
Nebworth and Connecticut, Division 38.
Thank you very much indeed. Mark Watkin, did you want to raise something on the matter?
No, not particularly, Chairman, but there are some actions assigned to officers, and I think it'd be worth just confirming that they've been carried out, that's all.
Just bear with me. Item 3.4. I do know that there was a task there from Tanya Roll. It's a very fast-moving situation. I know that Jim McManus, the Director of Public Health, and others have been writing to schools and updating schools across the piece. Item 4.4 requested a future report on the gaps in education. Yes, I don't think we've actually had that report yet, and that will be an ongoing item for Simon Newland, who I know is in this meeting. 6.3. There was a letter. There'd been a number of letters actually, but there certainly were letters and advice sent out from Director of Public Health and the education team, advising them of the current situation and giving advice, and indeed significant advice I believe has been I know has been given to schools as well. Item 6.4. Yeah, that was very much around, that was a local issue around Hertfordshire. And that was it. Did you want to pick anything up out of any of those, Mark?
No, not particularly, Chairman, but just for the sake of procedure, it's always good to go through those and then confirm that they've been completed. That's all. I'm just being a bit of a pedant. Okay,
thank you very much, Mark. In that case, perhaps we can move on, and I'll go back to John Graham. You want to declare an interest?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Can I introduce myself as John Graham? I'm the member for Potters Bar East, and I'm sitting on this committee today to replace Caroline Clapper. My wife is the chairman of governors of a primary school in Park Street.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alan Plancy, can you turn your camera off, please? And has Jeff Jones come back in yet? No.
With us yet?
Sorry, Stephanie.
He's not managed to rejoin yet.
He hasn't joined it yet. Okay. I do know from a previous conversation that he indicated that he did have an interest because he is a governor of a school. So, as indeed probably a number of members may well be. Okay, so we're looking at the county council admission arrangements, as I said earlier, for 2022-23.
Excuse me, Chairman. Richard Thake, can I come in? Chairman, on my register of interests are all of my governorships and of Hitchin Boys, the ESC, my wife's interest as the JMI at St Hippolyte's. Surely we don't have to reiterate those when we're dealing with a county-wide position, or do we? Because if so, I would suspect 9/10 of the members might have an interest to declare.
Yeah. Well, Richard, you've actually indicated for the purposes of this meeting today your interests. I will take that up with Ellie and others and clarify whether the fact that it's been noted on the register of interest is sufficient to avoid people having to make individual representations at individual meetings. So good point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Jane. For the third time of asking, I think, are you able to take us through the proposals and you'll see there, colleagues, that there will be an opportunity to vote at the recommendation 3.1, and there's a number of different items in there. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, everyone.
I'm here to talk about Hertfordshire County Council's admission arrangements for 22-23. The County Council is required to consult on any changes to its admission arrangements through public consultation before determining those arrangements in February next year. So the proposals that we're talking about will impact upon the community and voluntary controlled schools in the county, 246 primary schools and just 1 secondary school. The proposals are relatively minor, and there's 3 main ones. Firstly, is to amend the primary definition we use when determining a child's nearest school in the primary sector. That definition we are proposing to change to include any faith school that prioritises children who live locally to the school before children of the relevant faith. The second proposal is to decrease the published admission number at Mark Yates School to 30. That's a request made specifically by the head and chair of governors at the school, linked to difficulties around class organisation and financial planning because of infant class size legislation. And thirdly, to clarify existing practice on allocating places to twins and multiple birth children over the published admission number. Currently, we say that we will allocate a place to a twin or multiple birth if their sibling has been allocated the last place available. However, in practice, we allocate to that twin or multiple birth regardless of the rule the sibling is actually allocated under. So it's actually clarifying our existing practice. They are the proposals that we propose to take forward via consultation. If agreed, we would be consulting between the 26th of October and the 6th of December, and the responses to that consultation will come back to panel and to cabinet in February next year, and we'll have to determine arrangements before the end of February 2021. Thank you.
Beautifully succinct. Thank you, Jane. And I can confirm that I had a light bulb moment earlier on today, and I understand it. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I'm getting Mark Watkin first. Yep, Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just interested in the faith school matter. I just wanted to be clear in my mind. Are these primary schools, these faith primary schools at the moment, do they show the faith allocation rule as ahead of nearest proximity? And, you know, is that what's actually been changed? First question. Secondly, just for clarification, I believe that certain faith schools who choose not to want to change because they put real value, sorry, that's has a prejudicial comment. They decide they would wish to have children of the declared Church of England faith before others, will still carry on doing so. And thirdly, whose idea was it?
Okay, perhaps I can take those in reverse order. So starting with whose idea was it? The proposal actually came from the Diocese of St Albans. It was linked actually to an individual inquiry from an individual school that led to a more general discussion about our definition of nearest. The St Albans Diocese actually supports its Church of England schools moving to prioritise children locally before children of the faith. So this is very much a position that they support. And as a county council, at the time of discussions, we saw no reason not to support it because it would increase the number of nearest schools for children. When we've modelled this arrangement, it has very little impact over the county council as a whole, and only 5 children wouldn't have got their previous nearest school. The second question is it has no impact whatsoever on the faith arrangements of faith schools unless those individual schools wish to amend their arrangements. There's no pressure on those schools to amend their arrangements. They are responsible for their own arrangements either as a trust or a voluntary aided school, and they can keep their arrangements exactly as they are. That's no issue whatsoever. For the schools that would be included in our definition, should this proposal go forward, they already prioritise local children before children of the faith. That's a decision that their governing body or Academy Trust has already made. And a number of schools are now deciding whether they do wish to amend their arrangements so they could also be included in the definition. Does that answer everything, Mark?
I think that was a very comprehensive answer. Thank you, Jane. I'd expect nothing less from you, of course, but it was very helpful and clears up my understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Before I come to John Graham, Richard Thake, could you turn your camera off, please? I mean, we love watching you.
We love watching.
My apologies, Chairman. I had no idea it was on.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you so much. John Graham.
Chairman, thank you very much to the question that Mark just asked, and Jane, to your comprehensive question. I suppose the question for me is interesting to see in Appendix A the 23 schools that are listed. I mean, I know of a faith school that would love to change its definition so that it becomes the nearest school, this nearest and closest. How does a school get itself onto that the list that's in Appendix A? What's it need to do?
It needs to amend its arrangements so it prioritises local children before children of the faith. Is the simple answer.
Okay.
Jane, just picking that up, will this, if this is approved, will that automatically allow that school to make that change?
It's totally separate things, Terry. We are talking here about the county council's admission arrangements. So we're only talking about our arrangements. Any other own admitting authority or school or academy in the county council has got responsibility for its own admission arrangements, and therefore if they want to change them they would have to go through their own consultation, as we are doing now. But the two are totally unrelated. Obviously, if any of our faith schools wants to join our definition, their governing body or academy trust would have to agree that proposal. They'd have to go out to consultation, and then they'd have to determine new arrangements for 22-23. And when they did that, we would then add them to our definition.
And there are specific timelines for all of those steps in the process.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go, John. I think that probably gives you a fairly comprehensive answer across the piece.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. That's very helpful indeed. Thank you.
Pleasure. Nigel.
Thanks, Terry, and thanks, Jane, for your previous response. And I had a light bulb moment too, Terry, when Jane made her first presentation, because I really didn't follow it in the papers what was being proposed. So thanks very much. I suppose the question I've got, I mean, my concern always on these things, which are very difficult, I know, with some of the faith communities, is, are we denying access to a local school to a person who isn't of a particular faith when in some areas we are restricted on choice? And I guess my follow-up question from Mark's point is, how many faith schools do we have in the county who do prioritise faith over location?
I haven't got the exact numbers. I'm more than happy to share them, obviously, with yourself and other panel members afterwards. But the majority, I think we've got 23 that would include within our definition who obviously who prioritise local children before children of the faith. I would say that's maybe 25 to 30% of our. Oh, in fact, that's probably just talking about our Church of England schools.
Right.
None of our Catholic or Jewish schools prioritise local children before children of the faith in general.
Right.
Whereas Church of England schools fewer Church of England schools have very strict faith criteria.
I agree. Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I don't know if there's anything we can do to encourage others to be more inclusive, but that would be my.
I think it's very often it's down to a guidance from their faith body as well, and I think the Roman Catholic diocese, it's very much, their schools are very much about the Roman Catholic faith.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much.
Annie Brewster.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. You've answered so much, but just a little bit to be absolutely clear. And it's interesting that only about 5 children there'll be a difference, which I think is very important when this is being discussed. It's not seen as something too worrying. But When you say all schools have to do is to dada, have all schools been approached by officers or by the diocese? How do they, or the governors, how do they actually know about this? And are you expecting a response, an active response from each school? Thank you.
It's basically yes and yes. Whenever we consult as a county council, I write to all schools explaining what the county council is proposing to do, so schools are aware of the impact of our arrangements on them. It's then for the governing bodies or academy trusts to decide whether they want to do something similar, something different, or make their own arrangements. So they are very clear on what we're doing, and we also ask them to let us know whether they are going to consult, and if they do consult, we are a statutory consultee, so they must send us their proposals.
Excellent, thank you.
Richard Thake.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, my comments are purely and simply one of comprehension in terms of, I've heard three members, including the chairman, admit that they needed a light bulb moment to comprehend these papers. Now, Jane, of course, in her inimitable way, has given a very clear explanation, but it does concern me that if members of a committee who are well versed, I suppose, in the processes here, need an explanation from the lead officer, would the wider public who have got to comprehend these without that benefit be able so to do? So I'm wondering whether some explanatory notes or some reconsideration of the wording to make it clearer, if clearer it can be made, would be wise. Simple as that, Chairman.
Thank you.
I think if I may, I mean, my reference to a light bulb moment related to conversations that I'd had some while ago with Jane Avery, and not specific, not in the recent past, about this. I think actually that my feeling is that parents are actually quite clear about this, and the definition of this and the understanding of this. It does make it clear, and indeed the website has a huge amount of information to guide people through it. But Jane may want to add something.
Not really. I think I appreciate that I am an admissions expert and the panel and parents aren't. Unfortunately, admissions are complex, and we do our very best to try and ensure that when we are talking about admissions, we do it in a way that has got maximum transparency. Obviously, there'll be a full consultation document available on the website, which will go into more detail about exactly what we're doing and an explanation. And obviously, we're, as officers, we'll be open to questions from parents or schools or governing bodies if they need further clarity.
I think
Chairman, thank you. I'm really grateful for that, and I suppose in a way I knew that what was going to happen. I jolly well did know what was going to happen, but I think it was important that we brought it out in this meeting so that anyone listening to us understands that we do have concerns about the capacity of people to understand the technicalities of this process in a way that enables them to best react and get the best out of the process.
I think the other thing as well is just to recognise that this is, if you like, the first step in the process of making these changes, and that they do have to go for wider consultation across the county, and other admitting authorities can have an input into the consultation as well. So that's why I made the reference earlier on about timescales and so on. So it's quite a long process. Is that a fair comment, Jane? I think.
Yes, I mean, we are, as you're very right, Terry, we're at the start of the process. We'll be consulting between the 26th of October and the 6th of December. Then, as I said, the responses to that consultation will come back to panel and cabinet in February. Legally, we have to determine, i.e. finalise our arrangements in February, and this is obviously for September 22. So we're doing things 18 months in advance, as is required by national legislation.
Yep. I'm not seeing anybody else. So just to remind everybody that at 3.1, we're being asked to note and comment upon the report and recommend to Cabinet that a county-wide consultation is undertaken on proposals to amend the definition of nearest school for schools in the primary sector. And to clarify practice regarding the allocation of places to twins and multiple births. Consultation is undertaken in the relevant area to reduce the published admission number of Markyate Village School near St Albans, and the remainder of the County Council existing admission arrangements, including PANS, relevant areas and schemes of coordination, are retained for 2022-23. If you could vote, please, either for, against or abstain.
Chairman, just to say apologies, I wasn't here for the whole debate, so I won't be voting on this. Apologies, my system crashed, but
okay, Jeff.
Hopefully I'm okay now.
How do you vote? Sorry, I'm lost here.
In the chat, you just write for, against or abstain, Alan. In meeting chat. Alternatively, whilst you're just resolving that, do you want to tell us how you're voting? Alan Plancy. Right, we have a majority agreed. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for that. We move to item 4, the Hertfordshire Skills Strategy Update. This is just for us to comment on and note the updates from the Skills Strategy. And we welcome Kate Brierley and Caroline Cartwright. Caroline from the LEP and Kate from our own County Council.
Morning, Terry. It's Caroline.
Morning, Caroline. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good, good. Are you leading off on this, or is Kate?
I met with Kate this week, and I believe she is, although I can't see her.
No. Stephanie, do we know if Kate is on her way? Kate has arrived. Hurrah. Okay, Kate, would you like to take us through this?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Chair. This is panel paper with an update about the Hertfordshire Skills Strategy, and panel are requested to comment on and note the updates. So the strategy has been in place since 2015, and the development and implementation of the strategy is a partnership of Hertfordshire County Council, Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership, and the Department of Work and Pensions. Monitoring the progress of the strategy is reported to this panel twice a year, and also to the LEP Skills and Employment Board. So we are entering a very different economy now, and as such, monitoring of the current strategy has been deemed less relevant. Workers continue to progress the strategy, and projects and actions have been adapted to ensure continued delivery, and there's a lot of resources going into applying for the funding that is available to help around the skills and employment agenda. Also, the work to develop the 3rd edition of the strategy was paused earlier this year, but we are now planning again for how to do this. A really important part of that is that the LEP have commissioned an interim analysis of the skills and employment landscape in Hertfordshire, and we need that information to develop the 3rd strategy. This should be available at the end of November. So the working group, which, as I say, is officers from HCC, the LEP and the DWP, will be using the analysis and sharing it with a wider stakeholder group. And by that I mean sort of FE colleges, university, employers, training providers, to help us develop the 3rd edition of the strategy. And we're looking to have this ready by March 2021. That's the basic updates. I believe Andy Manson may be here with us as well, as and also Carolyn Cartwright from the Local Enterprise Partnership.
Can I just go to Caroline, because I'm delighted that Caroline from the Local Enterprise Partnership is with us. Did you want to add anything before I come to Andy Manson, Caroline?
Just put my camera on. Hi, Terry. Kate summarised it really well. It's actually come at a really good time, actually, the reviewing of the Hertfordshire skills strategy, as we've got a lot of huge impact areas like COVID, Brexit. Looking at our old strategy, it concentrated on young people, adults, sectors. We're going to look very much closely at places of Hertfordshire this time, and also the emerging job roles, the technology, impact of technology. So actually it's a very good time, I think, and the process we'll go through in the next 6 months is going to be very interesting. So, and the LEP will be working very closely to consult with all our stakeholders and partners, and we'll be running several seminars over the winter months. And
Caroline, I know that I think the last time that we physically were presenting was at Stevenage, and I think you were talking about the rolling out of the Youth Opportunities portal. How has that gone?
Yes, I'd encourage you all to take a look at HOP. So that's Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. So the Local Enterprise Partnership invested in a portal to connect employers and our residents and young people. So our residents really understand about the career opportunities available in Hertfordshire. We're very pleased with HOP. It's getting a lot of national recognition now, and we're looking at rolling out in other areas and how we can make the portal sustainable. And also it's been instrumental. So we've done an economic recovery hub. So a hub which you can look at if you're a young person and you've been infected, if you infected, that's the wrong word, isn't it? Affected by the current situation. So we're able to feed to our jobs and growth sectors that are recruiting, to information on what's happening in the Job Centre Plus and the DWP and the National Career Service. So please, I encourage you to take a look at HOP. It's still young, but it's my role as well to get this embedded in the county as a tool that all of our Hertfordshire residents and employers use.
And I have to say, I have had a look at it, although not in the last month or so, but I have looked at it. It looks incredibly helpful, easy to use, and I would urge everybody to have a look at it, and also to promote it across the piece. It's a really good piece of a really good facility.
Thank you.
Andy Manson, did you want to contribute?
I think Caroline has summed up the excellent resource that HOP is, and emphasised that it is for the whole of Hertfordshire community, not just young people. And Caroline did talk about the skills strategy need to focus on place, and from my perspective in children's services, we also need to continue to have a focus on our vulnerable, both young people and adults. From my perspective, it's young people. We're going to have more young people that are vulnerable now with a wider range of vulnerability. So it's going to be a really important piece of work.
Is this something that we might be able to link in with the government's Kickstart programme, or is that very separate?
Well, I think the skills strategy that we're proposing to consult on and develop is due to be in a draft form next March. So hopefully the Kickstart programme and other government initiatives will have begun to have an impact, although the next few months are very uncertain, I think. So it will need to reflect what's happened with those and what might happen in the future, because the skills strategy will be a 2-year or and its action plan will be yearly. So it will have to be of the moment and also look forward over what will be a reasonable period of economic recovery of years rather than months. So we should be reacting to the government initiatives like Kickstart now, and that's various groups are meeting to discuss those. the strategy will need to reflect that, but also reflect the longer term growth for Hertfordshire.
Thank you, Andy. I've got Nick Hollinghurst.
Yeah, thank you. I heard Caroline say that it was a very good time with COVID and Brexit coming along to carry out such an exercise. But to my mind, it might be worth waiting. It doesn't strike me as being a very good time at all, because we don't know how our trading patterns are going to develop. We don't know how our industries are going to adjust to COVID, and we don't know how society is going to change. So, a personal point of view, but I would have thought 6 months of wait to see what's going to happen might be valuable.
Kate, did you want to, or Caroline, did you want to reflect on those comments?
Nick, yeah, and I'd agree. And we've talked about this. Our last skills strategy was a document, and we're very keen for it not to be a document this time, but to be a live process. So we're continually reviewing those actions. So we want to do that anyway, but in light of the ever-changing situation, then absolutely I agree. So we're looking to have a live portal where our stakeholders can look at the skills strategy and we can be continually updating it. So I have another role as part of the skills advisory panel, where the Department for Education provide funding so each region can continue to look at the evidence base, so what the data is telling us. So that is an ongoing process. So as I said, we've got another report coming out in November about the evidence base, and then also again in March. So I agree with you in essence. So to say we will continue to look at it on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. Annie. Oh, sorry, Nick, did you want to come back?
Just to say thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Annie Brewster.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Caroline, in many ways, it was a similar point, that it is we're in a biggest crystal ball moment, probably ever, in terms of the moving feast of what's happening. So it was a similar thing when this was written, perhaps November, after furlough finished. I think it was the end of October you were talking about, would be sensible. But it's such an important piece of work, not just for what you're doing it for, but actually wider reaching within how that's going to impact so many things in Hertfordshire. So I'm just wondering ways that we as members can perhaps use this living document in terms of actually pointing people in that direction in our other responsibilities. Thank you.
Caroline or Kate? Kate, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, thank you. I think it's really important to have, I understand and we feel the same, you know, it's very uncertain times, but we do need to have some sort of common platform for all the organisations in Hertfordshire to buy into and grow from. And this is, and it's so helpful with getting the funding. You know, when we're making application for funding, having that common platform and that partnership approach of Hertfordshire County Council, LEF and DWP is so important. As Caroline said, we're going to look to see how we can keep this more of a live document, but having that approach and knowing that we're all on the same path, we're all trying to achieve the same thing, and we're aware of what the issues are in the county. We need to make sure that everybody is aware of what the issues are and where the economy is growing and where the skills are, and identifying the skills that we do need to grow the economy in Hertfordshire.
Caroline, did you want to add anything to that?
Could I add something, Terry?
Yes, Andy.
Yeah,
please.
sorry. So, I mean, I understand what people are saying, but I think it, as well as, I mean, the previous strategy had some themes around areas that we wanted to focus on. If I take one example, which is the one that's closest to my priorities, which is about developing our future workforce. I think the member asked about how can members play a part. Well, if our theme for a Hertfordshire skills strategy is about developing our future workforce, so our young people and our young adults and the opportunities that they need in order to develop their employability skills for whatever the new economic landscape looks like, whatever the new jobs market looks like, And I think we all have a part to play. If we have that as a theme and as a priority, then when we're talking to our partners in the districts or the boroughs, we're talking to our businesses, we can use that as a way of saying, how can we work together to ensure that young people do have opportunities in this new landscape. So I think there are, even though we will be responding to changing times, if we have some clear priorities and clear themes, then we can use those to join together and work across Hertfordshire in partnership.
And I think it's fair to say that having a collaborative approach brings an absolute strength and allows there to be a common purpose going forward.
Absolutely.
Mark Watkin.
Thank you, Chairman. I've first a comment and then a couple of questions on some textual matters. It seems to me we're using the word growth as if somehow we're pursuing a path that's been very fortunate for this county over the last numbers of years. We have enjoyed tremendous economic prosperity relative to lots of the country. I fear that what we're now looking at is something quite different, which is at best holding hard to what we've got and quite likely, dare I say it, recession and closure of businesses. So really the point I'm getting to in a clumsy way is what are we doing about looking to help the workforce, those people who become now unemployed, in reshaping their skills? And is that as much, if not, or even more so, the pressing need facing our workforce in the next few years until some form of stability has been reached? That's my sort of general comment. The second one was, I was just interested in 5.1, YC Hearts are using money from the European Social Fund. I'm going to ask, is this under threat now that we are in the process of leaving Europe? I suppose technically we have left Europe, but we're still in that sort of strange world in the middle. Is that money going to continue? And the second question in 5.4 is that I was intrigued to see that the LEP have commissioned Hertfordshire County Council to conduct an analysis of local skills gaps. In a funny way, I'd have thought it'd been the other way around. I'd have thought the LEP were the people who are closer to industry than our county council people. But that's, please inform me, I think, is that I'm not challenging, I'm just slightly intrigued. Thank you.
I'll ask Andy to respond to your question about 5.1. Andy?
Yeah, the ESF funding started in January and runs for 3 years, so it's guaranteed for 3 years. After that, it's a political question for somebody else to answer about where that money might come from.
Okay, we'll diary that forward for 2 years and 9 months. Caroline, do you want to respond to item 5.4?
Yeah, there was a couple of points. We've developed our Unlocking Hertfordshire Economic Recovery Plan. So as part of that is skills and employment. So one of my roles is understanding how the government's plan for jobs is delivered locally. So we have a huge amount of actions and work we're doing with the Job Centre Plus, the DWP, the National Careers Service, apprenticeships, absolutely. So there's about 18 different actions in that Unlocking Hertfordshire document. So that's what we're doing about immediate recovery. In terms of growth, though, the Local Enterprise Partnership and my colleagues are still looking at this. So we've got some sector groups in Cell and Gene, for example, the work going on in Stevenage, and also some work in film and media. So they are still concentrating on those growth areas of Hertfordshire and doing work around that. ESF, I'm also responsible for that. So at the moment, with the European social funding, our existing projects are probably going to get extended till 2023. When ESF closes. They're currently in touch with us, the ESF managing authority, because there's a central reserve pot of about £220 million. So they're going to every region and we have to put forward our priorities of how we spend that. So, and then following that, there's several pots being talked about. But again, as Andy says, we will explain that in further detail as government explain what's going to replace ESF. And also, there was a point on the data analysis we do. So the funding that we get through the Skills Advisory Panel, we have subcontracted to Hertfordshire County Council, and you have an amazing data scientist that we use, Sarah Bish, who does all our analysis. So yeah, So we knew she was in place. So we subcontract her to do our data work, but it's all guided by the stakeholders as to what Sarah is analysing. So that was that part.
Thank you, Caroline.
Comprehensive.
Did you want to come back at all? Did you want to come back, Mark? I don't think Mark does, so we'll move to Nigel. Nigel?
Yes, thanks. Actually, Mark asked the question I was going to ask, so maybe just a quick thought on it. I mean, I think I think Mark's absolutely right. The issue is going to be a vast one for retraining people in the future, and currently a lot of people losing their jobs, either as a direct or indirect result of COVID and other changes happening. And I suppose I was just really going to ask, what specifically, or whether the officers can give any specific examples of how we are able to expand the training offer in Hertfordshire, or retraining, I should say.
I think this is probably a question maybe for Andy. I don't know. Andy, do you want to lead off and make a comment on this?
Yeah, so I haven't got specifics in terms of funding, but some of the initiatives are happening. So the government have put a lot of money into DWP through Job Centre Plus to work with people who are being made redundant, to look at working with them on sectors that are employing and retraining to pull them into different sectors. They've also given a lot of money to the National Career Service to provide guidance and information. There need to be jobs in order to provide guidance and information to get people jobs. It will allow them to consider what their pathways might be back into employment. But in terms of adult retraining, there is some money there, but I haven't got the detail with me. For young people, there's also money for young people to do an additional year in year 14 after leaving post-16 education. But as with a lot of these programs, they're in development, so I think we'll find more detail over the next few months.
Andy, you mentioned that you hadn't got that element of detail available, which I completely understand. Would you be able to share that with members after the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I can ask one of our partners in DWP to provide a list of what's happening. Yeah,
I think that would be useful, and it give some additional context to it, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, that's fine.
Asif, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So my question's actually about 2 or 3 different points. The first point is related to the strategy, trying to meet those people who find it difficult to access training and the skills that are needed. I don't like the term, but those who have been left behind by the skills strategy previously. So it could be, women, the BAME community in particular. The second question, hopefully, is also about the government announced that adults will be given training up to those who haven't got a level 3 in April. So is that any information on that? Is that going to be the funded courses or even unfunded courses that, for example, colleges or training providers could provide those particular skills that are necessary? Or because that, I think, is key. The downturn of COVID is going to impact many sectors, and those people who are in employment won't find themselves in employment. So is a strategy enough to give that training and working with government announcements in Hertfordshire in particular? So those are my 2 faceted questions about those areas that need those people who have been left behind that need to be targeted with training. And the second point is adults post-COVID and the government announcement of providing support for colleges and also for training providers. And what is it? Which type of courses? Is it funded, unfunded, or both?
Who's going to pick that up?
Yeah, I can do that, Terry.
Yep, Caroline, please. Yep.
Andy probably can a bit. The first part, support for our individuals who have barriers to the workplace. Hertfordshire Adult Family Learning Services, along with YC Hertfordshire, do the majority of the work, I would say, with those individuals who really are quite far away. And we had a conversation with them the other day, and they're looking at, again, perhaps bidding into more European social funding money to support that work. We also have a lot of national programmes like the Work and Health Programme, the Skills Support for the Unemployed. These programmes, these are national programmes which are being delivered in Hertfordshire. So what happens is our Job Centre Plus and our National Career Service work coaches, they will have this database of where all the provision is, and then they signpost their individuals, residents onto those programmes. So that's how it works. And again, we have an opportunity through the ESF Central Reserve Fund to potentially put in some more programmes to support those individuals. With regard to the Lifetime Skills programme, so this is adults who need retraining. They can have a funded level 3 programme. Then again, this is why it is really important for us to have the skills strategy analysis where our growth sectors are, because our colleges and our work-based learning providers need to look at where that growth employment is and then adapt their curriculum according to that. So that's why this analysis we're doing in November is really important. So in the background, what's happening at the moment, anyone who wants to go forward for the adult retraining programme has to put forward an evidence as what qualifications they're going to put in that package for our adults. So yes, that's happening in the background, due to start next April for our adults.
Asif, did you want to come back at all?
Thanks for that. And I think just more clarity on those, the adult thing, I think is key. And perhaps, colleges and training providers need that direction and look at, which areas, which sectors are working closely with the LEP to make sure that it is done. But yeah, I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Asif. Jeff Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wondered if I wanted to ask if our officers, Kate, Caroline or Andy, are aware of JobSmart, which is a scheme coming up by CVS Broxbourne, working with the district councils and DWP, whereby they are it's offering support for people who might need help updating their CVs, LinkedIn profile, that sort of thing, and brushing up on interview skills. But I know that they're coming to my division, and I think this is a very good initiative. I just wondered whether our officers were involved in that at all. But I'm sure this will spread out. It's probably more in the east of the of Hertfordshire, but it seems like a good initiative at the moment, especially with the way there's going to be a lot of people looking for jobs, as we know, unfortunately, in this climate. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they're aware of that. Yeah, JobSmart. Thank you.
Kate, do you want to pick up on that at all, or Caroline? Kate?
I'm not aware of that, so thanks for that. Interesting to know. Caroline, maybe I'll let her come in. I just think, it's another reason why we need that strategy to give that overall direction that all these groups, so a CVS in a particular area can see, yes, this is how we're fitting into this county-wide approach, so everybody understands what the drivers are and who the contacts are at the LEP, the DWP and HCC. So that's great to know. Thanks very much.
And I think it comes back to the point that I was making earlier, the fact that we've got a number of key players all talking to each other, so that you don't get this fragmentation. That can only be a benefit. Caroline, did you want to add anything?
So I'm not aware of JobSmart. However, I know Shaw Trust, who deliver the Work and Health programme, and also Haffles in Hertfordshire County Council subcontract to a huge amount of voluntary sector organisations to deliver So I'll have a chat with Chantel, who delivers HAFLs and coordinates that, but I expect they're a subcontractor to one of the big primes of our work and health programmes. But you are right about the voluntary community sector, how they're absolutely instrumental in this recovery and what they do in the ground in their communities. So we do need to really understand that sector and what the support they can offer.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, I think I've just got Nick Hollinghurst wishing to speak, and this is always a dangerous thing to say, but I think that's probably everybody then. So Nick, over to you.
Thank you. It's a bit off the wall, this, I'm afraid, but it seems to me that this is an excellent thing to do. I did mention the timing, but people have taken that on board. Excellent thing to do. But I really feel that we do have some other problems apart from simple lack of skills and training, and that is social attitudes, especially to jobs which have low status. And I'm thinking particularly of carers. It's highly skilled, being a carer, if you think about the social skills you need, the caring, for example, and you are dealing with difficult situations a lot of the time. There is no adequate career structure in caring, the low status job, and I think there is a role for local authorities to try and improve public awareness of the importance of caring. Now, I was just looking at some of the situations on the continent in Scandinavia, where they have a high proportion of their workforces, of course, in the service industry, and just like it is in this country. And we're suffering very badly because the service industry that we've majored on is hospitality, whereas they are not short of that in Scandinavia, but they do have a very well structured caring and social service industry, as it were, run by the local authorities, of course. So when you can't get out and you don't go to a pub, the pub suffers, of course, but you're not really suffering. But when it comes to caring, that has to go on. So if we built our society on jobs which are socially and practically more important, we might have done a bit better. That's another thing. But I'd like to say that it's not just carers, it's things like building industry, where that is very highly skilled technically, a lot of safety issues as well, transport, lorry drivers, for example, train drivers and so on. These are all jobs which are very important, and we've had trouble in recruiting people into them. And I would suggest that if we gave more recognition to the value of such jobs, even though they're not careers or academic in some way, we might have more people going in for them. And of course, the training is important, but you can't train people that don't step forward. And I would just like to suggest that we as a local authority really could do a lot towards improving the status of some of these jobs, improve the number of people available, and then we'll get some customers, of course, for all those skill training courses we're planning.
Okay, thank you, Nick. I think that was more of a comment than a question, but that's all good for that anyway. So thank you. I am not seeing anybody else. Alan Plancy has slightly jumped the gun and typed 4. So Alan, when we come to ask for the vote, don't vote again, because I'm sure the folks in Democratic Services will have seen this. The recommendation is for the Cabinet panel to comment on and note the updates about the Hertfordshire Skills Strategy. I believe that we have actually done all of that. So could you, if you are prepared to accept that recommendation, could you type 4 or against or abstain, please?
I just found how to do it. Sorry, Terry.
No, that's all right, Alan, don't worry. all part of skills training.
Zoom is easier for me. I don't know why.
Me too, Alan.
I think that we have probably got, yep, good. Okay, so we move on to item 5, transferring the library service to Libraries for Life. This is really an update of where we are and the journey thus far, from when we decided to undertake that and transfer the library service. But of course, since then, there's been an awful lot of changes or things happening outside our control, particularly with COVID, obviously. So we welcome Taryn Pearson-Rose and also Michelle Murphy, who is the acting head of the library service. So Taryn, do you want to just take us through the paper? Although I'm sure everybody has actually read it. So
yes, of course, Terry. Thank you, Chair. And good morning, everyone. So we last briefed you around the transfer to Libraries for Life back in February this year. And as the chairman's already said, a lot has happened since then. So we felt that we should come back to panel today to provide you with an update. And so really, this report is just for you to note and to comment upon. So back in February, whilst there had been a delay in transferring the service across to Libraries for Life, plans were in place and proceeding extremely well for a transfer of the 1st of April this year. We had high confidence at that point. Both organisations were working very well and everything was very much in place. However, events overtook us with the escalating impact of COVID-19. And as such, I'm sure members are aware, but on the 18th of March, the County Council, in mutual agreement with the Library for Life Board of Trustees, agreed to further delay the transfer. A few days later after that, on the 21st of March, we actually made the decision as a County Council to close all library buildings. And then very shortly after that, central government announced that all libraries across the country needed to close, and we went into lockdown. During lockdown, our digital library services were incredibly popular, and we launched a whole range of new digital services during that time. We also had a number of frontline staff redeployed to alternative services and projects such as Operation Shield. National restrictions related to provision of library services were eased on the 4th of July this year. And since then and over the summer, the service has implemented a phased service recovery plan, which is very much in line with the national library sector guidance and government guidance, of course, as well. So a huge amount of work has taken place to restore and adapt services as far as we're able within the current restrictions and guidelines to ensure that we are able to provide physical access to lending services and computers for our residents. It's quite complicated. All return stock is now quarantined. Libraries have to be made COVID secure with a range of new processes that need to be adhered to by our customers and, of course, our staff. Section 5 of the report provides more detail on the recovery to date, which has culminated in all our Tier 1 and Tier 2 libraries reopening, which is 30 out of our 46 library buildings that we have across the county. What's important to note, I think, at this point, and particularly in the context of Libraries for Life, is that during lockdown period, and to some extent during the phased recovery period, the library service has not had the opportunity to generate income in the normal way, to hold events, and obviously there's been significant restrictions even in that recovery period on what we can actually do. And these are all very key elements of the service specification and the contract that we will have with Libraries for Life. And so therefore consideration of sort of these factors and the extent that these elements need to be restored before the service can be transferred is a key part of this paper, and I'll come on to that in just a little bit more detail in a moment. So just sort of finishing on the service recovery element, the next steps for us around that are assessing and introducing measures to make our Tier 3 libraries COVID secure, and those Tier 3 libraries are our libraries that are in partnership with volunteer community library committees, retraining the volunteers and then taking a phased approach to opening, introducing access to larger study spaces in many of our libraries, and investigating options for opening some of our meeting rooms for hire as well. However, these next steps of recovery can only be reintroduced as national restrictions and local circumstances allow. And whilst the service is very keen to make progress, we do, of course, need to continuously look at the current situation, particularly around COVID, and make sure that we only take steps when we are absolutely confident that we have the capacity and it is safe to do so. Section 6 of the report, we've highlighted the risks of both progressing with the transfer of the service to Libraries for Life too early, and whilst the service is still under significant restrictions on how it operates due to COVID. But also this has to be carefully balanced because there are some risks in delaying the transfer, which are also set out in Section 6. So the question I'm sure that is very much on our minds when we think about the transfer to Libraries for Life is sort of when will we be able to do that? And given the very fluid situation on COVID at the moment and the restrictions that this imposes on the service, what we have tried to do and endeavoured to do in Section 7 of this report is to provide some detail on the level of recovery that we feel is necessary to enable the transfer and ensure that Libraries for Life is in the position to be as successful as possible as we transfer it. But also what we have tried to do in this table is very much consider the risks that I've mentioned already. So in Section 7, we set out a range of indicators which include income, opening hours, physical visits and some others. And we provided an indication of the level of recovery needed in each of these areas and where we are now and what we're doing to try and get to that kind of recovery level. These factors reflect, and these indicators very much reflect the sort of contractual measures and the specification that Libraries for Life have been asked to deliver against. And clearly we're in a situation at the moment where the council itself is not able to recover to a sufficient level to achieve all these areas at the moment either. We will review this assessment on a regular basis and very much as recovery moves on, and also in the context, in the context of where we are with COVID and the restrictions. The final part of the paper looks at the financial implications in this paper, and the financial implications have not changed significantly in terms of what we presented back in February. However, what it does include and what is different is it includes the non-achievement of savings in this financial year in Section 8.8, which is 280,000 for the first 8 months of the year. I'll leave it there, Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you very much indeed, Taryn. I think, no, it's, yeah, I think Taryn, no, we're okay. Judy Billing.
Thank you, and very grateful to Taryn for her comprehensive briefing that she gave me the other day. And I think, Terry, you indicated that it was all right for me to ask questions about the service generally under this item, not just the transfer. Can I just check with you that that's okay?
Yes, I mean the essence of the item is transferring the library service to Libraries for Life, but I am prepared to offer a level of flexibility because I realise that members have not had an opportunity to talk about the library service for a little while. So as long as we don't go too far off the key route, yes, happy to accommodate.
That's magically generous of you, Chair. Thank you very much indeed. The one question I asked Taryn the other day about the transfer of the library service was the one that I don't think anybody's able to answer, but I'll ask it again here for the sake of the public thing, which is, when do we think we may be able to do that? So that's that one question that I know the answer is we've no idea. And my other question, though, and I've been thinking about it since Taryn and I spoke the other day, is about those 16 volunteer libraries that aren't currently able to open for all sorts of totally understandable and really rather obvious reasons. But it does worry me that the level of social isolation that could be causing in those very small, more rural libraries could be having a bigger effect than we might imagine. And I just wonder whether we've got any sort of data intelligence view about the sort of problems that is causing isolated people in rural communities, many of whom won't have been out very much in the last few months, and it does concern me. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Judy. Taryn, are you able to respond to either of those elements?
Yes, of course. I mean, just yes, for clarity for everyone. So at this moment in time, we cannot say when we are likely to transfer the service to Libraries for Life for all the reasons that I've mentioned, and hence why we have tried to provide that detail of where we would need to be able to do that. We are going to continue to review it constantly, but at this moment in time, and I particularly think since sort of we've now become sort of gone into more sort of measures to deal with the second wave of COVID, it is more difficult to answer that question. So Judy, you're absolutely right. I'm afraid I don't know, and I can't say at this moment in time. In terms of the services in communities, I completely agree. In terms of we've worked very hard to get our tier 1 and tier 2 libraries open and to have a broad geographical spread across the county. So hopefully no one is too far away from a library that is open and able to provide some services. Of course, we do have a whole range of other services that people can access, but in terms of digital services, they understandably don't quite do as you suggested, Judy, and bringing people together to try and sort of break down some of that social isolation. We have continued to deliver the home library service through sort of the end part of lockdown and over the last number of months as well. But I think it is a broader question, though libraries do clearly have a part in how we support rural communities and people that are socially isolated. And I think sort of some of the comments that we heard actually in the earlier item about working very closely with the voluntary sector, our town and parish council colleagues, and a whole range of sort of partners to support people that are isolated, whether they're in sort of our urban areas or in more rural areas, is very, very important. And yes, community libraries have a place to play in that, or a part to play in that, I should say. But I think it is a very important and much broader question for us as a county council with our partners. So I'm not sure if that's answering that well enough, but in terms of the community libraries, when we believe it is safe to do so and the restrictions allow, we will get on with that. But we just have to take measured steps at this moment in time.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to put it on the table. Thank you, Terry.
No, you're very welcome, Judy. I think one of the challenges, of course, is that sort of looking if there is any form of crystal ball, is just to be aware that in a number of the community libraries, some of our volunteers are of an age where they may not necessarily feel comfortable in going back into the front line. I think Taryn makes a good point about the role potentially of particularly parish councils and local community centres and hubs as part of the social network, because one of the other challenges I think that the third tier, the voluntary library services, face is that they always operate with support from the tier 1 library personnel, and of course we mustn't forget that there may, I'm not saying there are, so I don't want anybody to misunderstand, but there may be folks who are unwell, who would normally be working in tier 1 libraries, and who are not available to support the tier 3 libraries. So it is very much a balancing act to try and make sure and do the best we can for everybody.
Thank you.
Annie.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, Taryn, thank you. I'm almost building on what Judy was saying. As you know, I've got 2 tier 3 libraries newly opened in my villages. So it's a 2-pronged concern. One is that we don't lose any of our volunteers going forwards. So I don't know whether there's any interaction with them from officers, if that might be a good way to actually just keep the interest and just the morale up. That was the first thing. But something I hadn't thought about when you just mentioned parish council and partners. Of course, our younger library goers are very into social media. The children are being very well catered for at school. Our older ones who don't do that, it's all about books. We have got armies upon armies of volunteers all over our villages who are frustrated that they've got nothing to do to help with COVID. I mean, they've been asked for milk and bread and even socks, but I'm not sure whether there's any book service that perhaps they could get involved with. You might already have this covered, but the whole winter ahead with less exercise, that would just be a ray of light if there's something that the volunteers could do. Thank you.
Annie, I'll let Taryn respond to the your question about your army of volunteers. But what I would also say is, in terms of the opportunity to engage in reading, one of the things that the library service I know has done, and I don't think Taryn's mentioned it, is spent a significant amount of money on purchasing new e-books and increasing the stock of e-books so that people can actually engage, not necessarily in a physical book. And that was particularly important during the lockdown, that the incidence of people wanting e-books was very much higher for obvious reasons. But Taryn, do you want to respond to Annie's point about her army of volunteers?
Yes, so very happy to respond to that. And I think it might be useful to bring Michelle in to be able to say the sort of work that we've done to keep in touch with the community libraries in a moment, so that people can feel reassured that we have been keeping in touch with community libraries and working with them over sort of the last few months, or 6 months almost, isn't it now? But in terms of working with volunteers more generally, I mean, the home library service is traditionally run by volunteers, and I think during lockdown, staff stepped in because volunteers were busy elsewhere, or a lot of our volunteers traditionally in this that service, the home library service, tend to be sort of in that older age group and perhaps needed to shield or stay at home. But certainly, I mean, perhaps it may be something that we can look at in a little bit more detail about how potentially we might work with volunteers more generally. And absolutely, I think we're going to, over the last 6 months, potentially some volunteer committees may have some volunteers that they can't, that aren't willing to, because of their health conditions or whatever, come back in to support community libraries. So we'll be needing to work with them to do a lot more recruitment. And I know, for example, we had so many people volunteer to support Operation Shield, and I made sure that when those volunteers sort of finished on that project as we closed it down, that we touted all the volunteering opportunities that we have across the county council to encourage them to support us more broadly, which very much included libraries as well. But perhaps if I might bring Michelle in just to talk about how we've kept in touch with the Volunteer Libraries Chair, is that okay?
Of course.
Thank you, Taryn. So yes, Taryn's absolutely mentioned that we've continued with the contact with our committees throughout the lockdown period and beyond. So we regularly would have meetings between the operational staff in the areas, the management staff and the community services team, which is a very small team that helps to support all of the community libraries. And we hold those with the committees. So whilst we've been in lockdown, that's usually been the chair and whoever else within their committee that comes along. So those have been continuing, and obviously a lot of the business around that has been questions about when we can reopen those tier 3 libraries. So we have been keeping them up to speed on the context of recovery across the whole of the network. So we've been keeping the committees up to speed on recovery in the tier 1s and the tier 2s. We've been learning a huge amount as a service and indeed as a sector around how to reopen libraries in this global pandemic situation, and we've been very keen to share that learning and to say to the committees, we may have had one thought about how we might have a model going forward at the beginning of that process, but experience has shown that we want to adapt that for when we're ready to open for the tier 3. So we have been trying to keep that communication going. In terms of the helping the volunteers helping us across the whole of our recovery, we did have some volunteers from community libraries who we engaged when we started to open our tier 1 libraries. They were very helpful in doing what we called a kind of dry run walkthrough. So we had to get our buildings secure, COVID secure, and we'd learnt some shared best practice from elsewhere in the country, where they'd said it had been really helpful to have some sort of friends and family or members of the public that were sort of trusted members of the public who could come in and test to see how those measures worked and whether it felt right for people when they were coming through, because new layouts, etc. Was it logical? Was it safe? And so some of our volunteers certainly helped us with that. We have been continuing the home library service, as Taryn has mentioned. We actually managed to do that in a COVID secure way because it was akin to a doorstep delivery. So as you know, during the lockdown, doorstep deliveries were allowable. We did have to switch to the staff to do that, partly because of the speed in which we needed to mobilise that. We did check with all of our vulnerable customers. We did have a number who did not want to receive any kind of delivery. There was a lot of a caution around having items coming into the home or seeing people even at the doorstep. So we did have a number of our customers who chose not to have that, but everybody who did want it, we did get those visits out to, and we have continued to get those visits out on their normal regular pattern, with the exception of some care home settings which obviously had other restrictions which made that impossible. So we have continued to do that. We are now starting to introduce our volunteers back into that process. So where some of our home libraries volunteers are very keen to pick up on delivering, they are now doing that again. So we are beginning to introduce our volunteers back in. And I absolutely hear what everyone's saying around how we might use those volunteers from our tier 3 libraries who are currently unable to deliver from the library itself. And we have looked, when we were doing the Ready Reads offer, some of the volunteers, and I do believe they were from either Wheat Hampstead or Redbourne Annie, did go and collect some of those Ready Read packs to deliver to people in those 2 communities, but they had to travel to our tier 1 library to go and get those because that's where the service was running from. So I think there are ways we can adapt and we can use those army of volunteers, absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, can I just come back on that? Michelle, that's really brilliant. But I'm just wondering then if it might be worth our coordinators of I think they're more like shopping volunteers, really, and they're not the ones. The good thing is they're not the ones shielding, whereas our library volunteers often are. That, you know, just if we can just know the route to pass them through to, whether that should be our main coordinator within our libraries or in fact through officers, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
I think probably what we can do, Annie, is to ask Michelle to just do a very short note to describe the roadmap of being able to achieve that. I've got Mark Watkin, and I think that probably will lead us to the conclusion of this item. But Mark, your question?
I'd better keep it brief then, hadn't I, Terry? You want to press on, obviously.
No, I would never try and. Yes, I would.
Yes, you would.
I was going to say, for goodness sake, you would, Terry.
Sorry, Judy.
And probably with the better for it too. First of all, let me just say, I think the library service has done a fantastic job over the last 6 months. I mean, what the challenges it had to face, bearing in mind where they thought they were going to be, as Taryn explained, in March, and they were just about on there sort of signing the document and setting up a new world. I mean, on both sides of the fence, Libraries for Life and our own people, it must have been a real body blow not to be able to go ahead. However, that having been said, I do have a few questions, and they are more of the strategic, I guess. I mean, one of the advantages of the Libraries for Life approach was the saving in business rates, for example, £500,000, I think was the figure. And that figure is still waiting, it's still sort of sitting there as an opportunity. So sort of on the back of that, and as I recall, the opportunity to be an independent operator from the county in terms of what the Libraries for Life could do in terms of raising their own funds. I'm just sort of, and I absolutely understand, you know, the world is in a very, very different place, and everyone has just been fighting hard just to stand still. But I've got a couple of questions, if I may. One is, do we, you know, can we change the model a little bit to make it sufficiently attractive so that we can revive Libraries for Life and get it going sooner rather than later? Or if it really is a massive challenge, is there even the sort of sense, well, we better start again, clean sheet of paper? So I'm sort of asking two big questions, because in a way, I'm sure they are feeling very frustrated, and in a way I'm frustrated because I felt there was a lot to be said for the concept of what was being delivered. Some of my colleagues might not agree with me, but I've got the floor, they haven't. So just those two questions really, but as I said, in the context of what they've achieved, I think they've done an extraordinarily good job, and I certainly want to put that on record.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for the comments. I think I will answer those, and Taryn or Michelle may wish to chip in afterwards. In terms of reviving Libraries for Life, Libraries for Life doesn't need reviving because it is actually there, and you will recall, and everybody will recall, that the decision was made at Cabinet and possibly even at full council, but certainly at Cabinet, to undertake the transfer of the library service to the successful bidder for that contract, which was Libraries for Life. They have been, I have to say, and I recognise and would put it out there, that they have been incredibly supportive and understanding of the circumstances that have surrounding the delay in the transfer of the service to them. And I appreciate that. But one of the reasons that we have not pressed on at this time with it, although it is still very clearly, and I need to make it very, very plain, it is an active piece of work that it will happen. But we did not want to move forward and transfer a service that was actually effectively losing money because it was not able to achieve the revenue elements that the library service was able to do before COVID captured us or hit us. So in that perspective, They are there. They are waiting in the wings, and I know that they will be looking forward to moving forward and taking on a vibrant and positive and as much as possible a fully operational library service. In terms of starting again, no, we would not be able to do that, because apart from anything else, we have gone through a legal procurement system. And if we were to now seek to either change the elements of this, or indeed the time, or the not so much the time scale, because there's specific reasons for that, but change the elements of that, that could in fact lead us open to challenge from any other body who may have also undertaken the tender process for the library contract. So I don't. That's where I am, and that's my understanding of it. Taryn, do you want to add anything to that?
No, Chair, I don't think I can add anything to that.
Mark, did you want to come back at all? Because you raised.
I just felt it was important to put that question on record as much as anything else. I think in our minds, we're all, well, no, I can't say everybody feels the same way, but I think we're keen to see the service continue to develop and flourish. And I think Libraries for Life is the right direction for it. So I'm just keen to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to enable that to happen. So thank you for that statement of intent from you. That's good.
It's a very clear statement of intent, and I would even go so far as to say that, if you like, the switch is wired up, ready for it to be effectively flicked, that we will move to Libraries for Life. But at the same time, and at the risk of repeating myself, what I don't want to do is have a situation where we are transferring a service with a huge I was going to say a huge debt round its neck. That's the wrong expression, but we want to transfer it, as I said, in a lively and vibrant and operationally successful way. And at the moment, it's successful and it's good, but it's not running at full capacity. We don't want to sell a car that has only got 2 cylinders running out of the 4.
Yes, those are the sort of cars I buy. But actually, I think the word you're looking for is sustainable.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And on that happy note, I'll hand it back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. So I don't see any other request to speak. So if hold on, Nick, you've come in right at the last minute. So can I ask you to be brief, please?
Your last remark, Terry. We don't want to be buying cars with any cylinders at all, not anymore.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm sure that will make the headlines somewhere. Thank you for that, Nick. Right, the recommendation is to. No. Sorry.
The recommendation in the headlines, Terry. Thank you.
Do you want to repeat that?
I said I never thought of making the headlines with it, Terry.
Okay, good. Thank you, Nick. The recommendation is to note and comment upon the content of this report. If I could ask you just to vote, please, for, against, or abstain. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Item 5 is agreed. We move now to item 6, the Hertfordshire Armed Forces Covenant, an update report, which is going to be presented by Ashley Lamprell, the policy officer. So good morning, Ashley, and it's all yours.
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you for having me to share with you the Hertfordshire Armed Forces Covenant Board annual report, which this panel is welcome to comment on and to note the updates. This report follows on from annual reports received by the panel in previous years. As some of you probably know, the Hertfordshire Armed Forces Covenant Board brings together business, military organisations, charities, NHS and local authorities who work in partnership to ensure three main aims. Firstly, that no veteran faces a disadvantage when accessing public services, that the armed forces community is honoured and celebrated for the sacrifices they have made, and that the military and civilian communities are well integrated. So I'll briefly just go through the contents of the report, which outlines the work of the Covenant Board from October 2019 until now. The report mostly highlights the work around marking big commemorative events which took place this year, like the 75th anniversary of VE Day and VJ Day, and Armed Forces Week, which is the time of year every year that we pay tribute to the Armed Forces community. And although the pandemic meant we couldn't do things as we normally might, we were able to adapt and kind of move our activities online. This year, the health subgroup of the board partnered with Health Watch Hertfordshire to launch a survey of veterans to establish an evidence base of any access issues that Hertfordshire veterans might have experienced when accessing NHS services. And the report is due to be presented to the board early next year, along with any recommendations. This is part of the board's aim of ensuring fair access to services and is funded by Hertfordshire Public Health. And as part of the board's aim of joining the military and civilian communities, we successfully conducted our 7th annual Christmas art competition last year for Key Stage 2 pupils in Hertfordshire. And an award assembly took place at the Winners' School this past January. And you can see the winning artwork is in an appendix to this report. We've also launched this year 2020's competition as well, which will focus on the many different roles that the military does, particularly highlighting their role this year in the pandemic response. And the final section just lays out some projects going forward into the next year, one of which is planning for the 10th anniversary of the signing of the Covenant in Hertfordshire. And we're making plans now for the reaffirmation ceremony, hopefully taking place at the end of 2021. So yeah, thank you, Chairman. That's all from me.
Thank you very much indeed, Ashley. Do we have any comments? I think this is a very useful report. There's a couple of things I would just pick up, and I think we will look forward to the health survey that you've mentioned coming out in the early part of 2021. And I think also as part of the wider promotion of the Covenant Board and the importance for veterans is that if my memory serves me, the next census is going to have an item in there, a question in there asking if you are a veteran. And also in doctor's surgeries, when people physically go into them, there are some posters starting to appear in doctor's surgeries, sort of just suggesting, and we appreciate that a number of veterans may not wish to disclose the fact that they are a veteran, but just offering the support to them if they need to or if they feel so inclined. So having said that, Annie Brewster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ashley. Actually, it was just a thought. When I looked at the fantastic Christmas competition, although there's 600 entries, they're only from 8 schools, which over Hertfordshire, that's just nothing. And particularly with wanting to do more virtually, does it kick off around Remembrance Week? Because that could be something, and maybe even if there's a school representative that could join the Covenant Board, that could then try and actually extend the relevance of this. Also, the thought of things like our museum and gallery, for instance, in St Albans, is always looking for things to showcase, even digitally. So perhaps the results of competitions like this could be shared around the county. So it's just a thought. Might get more buy-in if it's made bigger. Thank you.
I'll let Ashley come in a moment, but we do actually put it out to all the primary schools in Hertfordshire, and I'm minded of the old expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We ask them to participate. We encourage them to, but if they choose not to, it's not for us to demand that they do. But Ashley, do you want to respond?
Sorry, can I just say on that, Terry? We found school competitions when the parents know there's something exciting at the end, i.e. the winning one is going to be made into something, or there's going to be, obviously we can't with social distancing, but an event when they can come to, we get far more entries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ashley?
Oh yes, thank you for those ideas. It's I mean, one of things coming out of COVID is the kind of opportunity to kind of think things a bit more virtually. So yeah, this year we are encouraging schools, if they would prefer, to make submissions virtually, and all of the judging and everything will be done virtually. We'll be kind of scanning the actual artwork if that comes in a physical way. We're scanning that in so the judging can be done virtually, of course, this year. So we will have virtual versions of the children's artwork, and are considering ways that we might be able to perhaps put that on, on social media. So that is certainly something in our minds in terms of getting it out there a bit wider this year. And we've also kind of made the deadline a bit earlier this year to give us a bit more time before Christmas to allow for those things once we have a winner. So yes, thank you for those ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to consider those. Thank you.
There you go. Richard Dake.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to say how pleased I am that this paper has come forward. As you know, we are huge supporters of this and wish to continue to do so. But I think it's particularly important now with the unfortunate necessity to cancel so many of the remembrance services coming up, that the county continues to keep in the forefront its support of our service personnel and armed services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. And I would just comment that both in VE Day and VJ Day, and especially in the forthcoming Remembrance Weekend or week, I know that there are a number of local areas who are undertaking a recognition of it and laying wreaths, and many of them are actually videoing it and putting it out via YouTube or other social media. And I think that's something which is very important. But thank you for your contribution, Richard. Judy Billing.
Thank you. I do have slight experience of trying to encourage schools to enter things, having loads and loads of entries that turn out to be from only 2 or 3 schools. And that happened to me last year with Holocaust Memorial Day and the work we were doing in North Hertfordshire. However, having heard Annie earlier today refer to her villages in a way that made me wonder if she did actually own them. And now she's going to encourage parents. I just felt a slight nervousness that you get parents doing all the paintings and poems and involvement stuff. And I just think I'd like us to be working harder with the schools than getting the parents all competitively fired up. I realise that's a public statement and I shall probably be absolutely lambasted on social media for having said it, but I'd still sooner go to the schools. Thank you.
On a point of clarity, both for yourself, Judy, and indeed Annie, when we make the award to the winning entry, it's presented by our link from Northwood headquarters, who I have to say have been absolutely brilliant with us, and we invite. There's normally a school assembly, and we do invite just the parents of the artist, the parents of the winning artist to it. So it's not an open evening or an open day for all parents. It simply wouldn't be possible to do that. The other thing, did I say it earlier? Of course, we're very proud of the fact that we have a number of people who work for Hertfordshire County Council who are reservists, and the fact that we were awarded the gold accreditation for the employers recognition scheme is something which I am hugely proud of, and long may it continue. I've just seen Judy's note. I suppose I ought to say that the meeting chat is really just to say if you want to speak or if you want, how you want to vote. But
apologies.
Those things. I noticed those things, so it's fine. I don't see anybody else wishing to participate. So the recommendation is to simply to note the contents of this update report. So if I could ask you to for against in the normal way, please.
Terry.
Hello.
Terry, I had my hand up, it doesn't matter. Listen, what's happened with the locality budget, I had somebody also from this, because they're saying with the poppies and everything, they're going to be really low in money. We've given them towards it.
We haven't got to locality budgets yet.
I think it's important.
No, Alan, we haven't got to locality budgets yet.
What? Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I was talking about the poppies for the veterans.
Right. Well, just hold on a second. Just hold on a second, because I can see that item 6 has been agreed. But I will give you, out of courtesy, Alan, I will just make your point, although it's not now going to be part of item 6. But just make the point.
Well, it's just we're dealing with the veterans, and somebody came to me from the committee telling me that they're going to be very low because of the poppies, that they can't go around selling them that they've been doing. So I gave them from, and my partner gave them from locality budget to try and boost it a bit for them, because it's important.
Okay. Thank you for that, Alan. Thank you. We move now, please, to item 7, the final item, I believe, apart from item 7, locality budget scheme 2019 to 2020, an overall breakdown of spend. John Birch, who has produced this fantastic detail of where the money's gone and the benefit beneficiaries. Do you want to introduce it, John?
Hello, I hope you can hear me. This was the 10th year of the locality budget scheme, which started in 2009, July 2009. So it's over that time we've had spent about 8 million. There's gone about 12,000 projects, and I think now you can add about 9 million, going to about 13,000 projects probably by the end of this year. It was almost all of the money was spent. I think we were about £9,000 short, and 77 out of 78 members spent everything in their budgets. There were some minor fluctuations in what the money was spent on. There was a little bit more for Year of Culture, which obviously had an effect during the year, so there's rather more cultural activity money, and rather less, if I remember right, to sort of general support. There was a rise in capital grants for things like maintenance of buildings, and a little less in some other areas. But it tends to fluctuate over the years. It tends to balance out. So you'll see a change from one year to another. But if you take it over 2 or 3 years, it balances out fairly well. I just realised my camera's not on. You can't see me. It might not be a bad thing. Other than that, it was a good year. The average grant, I think, went up slightly. We had slightly fewer grants, and therefore the average grant was a little higher than in previous years, but fairly routine sort of ordinary year until right at the end. The only thing about the report is that we normally have a breakdown showing that what beneficiary groups benefit from the grants, but unfortunately that tends to be done based on the evaluation reports, and normally we send out evaluation reports at the end of the year before the new year starts. Unfortunately, we had COVID this year, and so we didn't have a sort of nice delay period between the end of one locality budget year and the start of the next one. So we haven't really been doing those evaluations. So we'll hopefully catch up on them at some point. The final thing to note is we've got a new system for locality budgets for managing them coming in from next year, which will hopefully mean that members will be able to immediately see how much they've spent on everything rather than asking us to send their spreadsheets or whatever. There should be a much more interactive, a much faster, a much more efficient system they've had up until now. But there we are. Any questions?
And thank you, John. And I suppose, of course, although it's not actually relevant to this scheme year, because it occurred just after the end of March, of course, the additional £390,000 which the County Council allocated into the members' locality budget specifically to deal with COVID-19 has been hugely well received, I think, across the whole of the county. I've got Mark. Oh, wait a minute. Annie wants to speak, and then I'll take Mark Watkin. Yep, Annie.
Yes, thank you, John. Yes, I'd seen what you've just talked about, which looks great to see. That one of the highest amounts was the community art groups, 51,000. And I think gardens and environmental did quite well. And do you think it's only because of the Year of Culture, or do you think because it's sort of non-statutory that members are finding that there are not places for the arts to go to in other tiers of government in that way? And does some of the result of what is being asked for, is it quite well that it feeds back into panels like this, so we get a feel of actually where perhaps greater delivery could be required? Thank you.
John?
I think there was a boost last year because of Year of Arts generally. Whether that was unusual would have been like it without the Year of Arts, it's difficult to say. We've had quite a lot of arts related grants this year as well, but that's almost curiously because of COVID, because people are finding other ways to do artistic kind of material kind of things. So no, I don't think it was. You know, I don't think people are turning to locality budgets more over time to because there aren't other sources. I think it's been fairly stable over the years. It fluctuates, to say, a little from year to year, but over time, I think it's fairly much the same.
Mark Watkin.
Thank you, Chairman. In a spirit of continuing bonhomie towards the administration, I think the locality budgets have been a great success, and congratulations to the officers for the hard work that they have to put in. So anything that makes their life easier with the new system and makes our life easier to understand exactly what we've sort of half committed to and what we've spent will be welcome. So thank you very much for that. I just wondered, as I say to people, they will not find an easier way. When I say people, I'm talking about organisations making applications, that they will never find an easier way of actually getting money for their good causes with the least overheads of administration, and indeed in the quickest time possibly feasible. So again, a great big congratulations for that. I just wondered, have you ever, or do you ever get any applications which frankly are not acceptable and then have to be referred back to members? I'm proud to say it's never happened to me, but I'm just intrigued to know whether that does occur from time to time.
Can I come back on this before John does? Because the process, unless I've got it very wrong, and John, please tell me, is that before an organisation or a group makes a request, the intention is that they should have discussed it with their local member to get a feel from the local member or from whom they are seeking the money, whether he or she is supportive of that particular request, because on the basis that if they don't, and they put in a request and it does not find favour with the local member for any number of reasons, it then shows up as a refused application, which if you like, anybody wishing to interrogate it could see that sounds sort of quite grumpy, and why did they refuse it? Whereas if they'd gone to the member in the first instance, as the process requires, they would not have had that rejection. But John, I think that's accurate. But do you want to add anything?
Yes, it's actually a very important part of the scheme, because one of the reasons why it's so quick and efficient is because the members do a lot of work first. Effectively, because they have to approach the member first, that filters out a lot of rejections that would happen later on, as you say, because the member wouldn't wish to support them. So yeah, and it also means that the member is almost doing a sort of prior check on the organisation, because you have heard of them, you are happy to give money to them. So there's a degree of checking the bona fide of an organisation before the application happens, rather than afterwards. So the work that members do with the application beforehand is really important. That's why it is so efficient later on. We can cut a lot of other things out that might be necessary. And I'm trying to think now what Mark was asking, actually. But
no, I think he was asking about the process.
Well, no, what I was actually saying, Chair, if I can just come back in, is a sort of variation on what you've just said. But I mean, in theory, in human organisations, money could be misdirected. Let's put it as its nicest frame. And so I just wanted to be sure. Well, not even
I see. Yes.
just
Yeah.
yes. Had you found applications which, frankly, you felt were not appropriate for whatever reason, and I don't mean the sort that Terry's just raised. I read actually when a member signed it off and you said, no, hang on a second, that's probably not appropriate or something. It is a remarkably flexible system, and I just wondered, what parameters, if any, exist.
Yes, there's about 2 a year, probably. 1 or 2 applications a year come through which we don't like for whatever reason. Most of the time, actually, we kind of negotiate it so they simply amend the purpose of the grant in some way. And I think in most cases, even when we'd initially say no, they do eventually get some money, but we get it to tighten up on a certain few things here and there. I think the only ones where we've had outright no's have been ones where it's been something that has gone against council policy, or has been something favouring one side of something where the council would have to make a decision. So something about, for example, a recent one about wanting to have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in a town, where the decision has not yet been made, and the application was from one side of the argument. In the end, we said no, because at some point HCC is going to have to make a decision on this, and we couldn't be seen to be giving one side of the argument money earlier on. So that one didn't go through. But lots of the time we simply get the purpose tidied up a little bit, and then most of the time that seems to be okay.
Thank you. That was very helpful, and that's answered my question.
Thank you, Mark. Richard Thake.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Actually, Mark did precisely what I hoped I was going to do, essentially do a public thank you to John and his team for the exemplary way that he and the team conduct this, and the advice that we get in terms of whether or not a grant application might meet the criteria. And on a number of occasions, John and I have had differing opinions, and as a net result of that, we've gone back to the applicant and arrangements have been made to reapply in a way that met the advice that I had been given. So officers go out of their way to ensure that the money is correctly attributed, and I've got to say I think it's a system which many people in my patch and everybody else's patch have benefited from, and without the support that we get from the officer corps, it would make it much more difficult, if not impossible, to apply. Thank you very much.
I think one of the other features of this particular scheme, John alluded to it earlier, is the speed of the money going into the bank account. And when you say to an applicant, yes, I've approved it, and the money will be in your account within about 7 to 10 days. They just can't believe it. They're so grateful and delighted. Judy.
Thank you very much. I'm a massive fan, like it sounds like everybody else is, of the locality budget scheme, and have been since I became a county councillor, mostly because of the simplicity of its operation, for which I thank everybody heartily all the time. Having dealt with some rather more bureaucratic organisations over the years, I too find it astonishing the speed with which we're able to make these transactions. I particularly welcome the ability for the synergies which arise where, like me, you might find yourself representing half of a town, and where then it's very difficult to say, well, that only covers my division, when, of course, everything covers both mine and Derek Ashley's divisions, and it's incumbent upon us to work as well together as we can, and we do, to make sure that those synergies give the best value for the organisation seeking it. I did just want to say something about the arts piece, though, that Annie raised. Certainly in my town, we're very conscious of a lot of arts organisations suffering, who may be coming through with applications over the next few months. And in fact, in Hitchin, we have a special town talk next Monday night, specifically with the arts organisations who are struggling. Again, maybe looking for synergies that would enable them to support each other. So the only thing that amazes me really about this paper is that we're looking at ways of doing things even more speedily and efficiently. Because frankly, in an organisation like a county council, I didn't think that was possible. So when we come to full council next week, and I'm possibly being quite grumpy about a number of things, just remember my cheery resolution over the locality budget, and how I will fight for it to the death if anybody ever again suggests reducing it or removing it. Thank you.
I shall look forward to your questions at full council next week, Judy.
I'm sure you will, Terry.
Okay, if you tell me what they are beforehand, I'll make sure I've got the right answers for you. Asif.
No, Terry.
Asif.
Oh, hi. I think most of my points have been made, but just one of the things that I find slightly troublesome is that they're not troublesome. I think they're just hard to reach groups that find it difficult, who don't know about this particular grant. And what I tend to do is I get those so-called professional charities that apply very, very quickly, and and they apply and they get the grant. And when later in the year you think about that local football club or your little local residents association didn't realise about it, or a little community group, and it's about promoting this amongst those hard to reach groups rather than the ones that are constantly getting in very, very quickly and know about it and do make that application. It's just sharing the really good impact of this grant. It has been very effective, wider, and to those hard to reach groups. I think that's my comment for this particular.
Thank you, Asif. I think my comment to that is that so much. One of the beauties of this scheme is that the involvement with the member right at the beginning of the process, and I suspect everybody else recognise that when the scheme opens, let us say on the 1st of June, by about the 10th of June, you've had a number of professional fundraisers from very worthy large charities knocking on the door saying, can we have some money? There's also a point that, if my memory serves me, that the money should ideally be used for a project rather than for revenue. And John is nodding his head to that. And it's also up to the local member to be, I would argue, to be bold and say to perhaps those charities that the member is the member doesn't feel that they fit into the criteria of locality budgets, to say, no, it's not quite appropriate for me to support it. And there's no shame in that, because very often some of the larger charities with professional fundraisers are seeking money quite appropriately from every possible source that they can, whereas you make the very valid point, Asif, that there are small groups, perhaps a little, I can think of one, a little retirement older person's lunch club that wouldn't know how to do it if it wasn't for the fact that their local councillor just says, if you need a little bit of support or help for something, then this is available. And of course, the beauty as well is that the money may be very small amounts, a couple of £100, which is a lot of money to them, but in the overall scheme of things, to a national charity is marginal. John, did you want to add anything to my ramble?
Not a great deal. I think in the initial years of the locality budget, there was more bigger charities than there are now. It's always been an aim to try and get the little charities to know about us, and I think we've gradually got there over the years. But yes, the whole scheme is designed to encourage members to talk to people in their divisions and vice versa. So it's a lot of it is really up to the member to try and find those small charities and encourage them to apply. I think some members do deal with the big charities very well when they point out, they ask, how is it going to help my division? And the big charities often find it very difficult to answer that question. So that often gives you a very good means of saying no if they cannot show how it's going to specifically help your division.
And in point of fact, I had and it's not just charities, incidentally, we should say, it's any organisation with its own bank account. So it could be a little residence group or an old a lunch club or something like that. But I actually had a sporting club wanting some money, and I said, and I think they had a budget, let's say, or request for £1,000. And I said, how many of your members actually come from my division? It turned out it was 10%. So I gave them £100 as a proportion, which I felt was right. But the important thing is that it's not for me to say, or anybody to say how members should allocate their money, because it is a member's locality budget and it's the individual members who make the decision. Mark, you wanted to come back?
Only to be slightly frivolous, and also the sporting organisation that's facing a hard time wouldn't have been Watford Football Club by any chance?
No, it wasn't. It was a youth football club. Right. I think now we can move to the vote, and the vote is actually just for the panel to note the report. So once again, for, against, abstain. That has been agreed. Thank you very much. I should have mentioned, and I forgot, I will send her a note to thank Caroline Cartwright for attending this morning. So I should have said that at the time. I know she has left the meeting, but I'll send her a note to thank her. We come to item 8, any other part 1 business. There is no part 1 business that's been notified. So that concludes the meeting, other than to remind you that the date of the next Education, Libraries and Localism panel is on Thursday, the 10th of December. Thank you all very much indeed for your contributions and your attendance this morning. Have a good afternoon and enjoy the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Goodbye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Terry,
Bye.
bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye now.